I am the lover of a mafia boss. After the boss was executed by gunshot, I traveled back to his 18 years old. I found the injured teenager Leo in an alley and pressed him against the wall and kissed him. If you dare to fight again, I'll kiss you until you're a mess. Leo. 3 years after Leo was executed by gunshot, I also reached the end of my life. I didn't intend to commit suicide for love. I just counted the sleeping pills wrong. I really wanted to have a good sleep. Unexpectedly, when I woke up, I went back to 2010. In this year, my dad hadn't gone bankrupt yet. Everyone had to call him President Frank when they saw him. In this year, I was still a carefree playboy who spent money like water. In this year, I didn't know Leo. Leo had told me that he was in Changhua High School. It was a school so bad that I hadn't even heard of its name. At that time, Leo was holding me. After being satisfied, he smoked lazily. There are many dark alleys at the back door of Changhua. I will fight there and never lose. 30-year-old Leo had his sharpness restrained. His wildness and arrogance had long been pressed into his bones inch by inch. There was no longer any fierceness on his face. He would smile when talking to anyone, let alone fighting. He rarely spoke loudly. 30-year-old Leo was strong, but also gentle. Impulsiveness and frivolity seemed far away from him. We met too late. I didn't participate in his wild and absurd years. I couldn't imagine what 18-year-old Leo looked like when fighting. I said hoarsely, I really want to see it. Leo shook his head with a smile, rubbed the back of my neck, and said, forget it. Young master, you might be scared away. Unexpectedly, one day, I could really see 18-year-old Leo. As he said, maybe he really never lost a fight. But that didn't mean he wouldn't get injured. I just went to the back door of Changhua to try my luck. Unexpectedly, I really found an injured Leo in the alley. Crew cut, black t-shirt, sweatpants. When getting closer, one could smell the salty sweat smell, mixed with a faint soap powder fragrance. Leo was sitting against the wall. There was a steel pipe thrown beside his feet. He closed his eyes and his chest was heaving violently. It seemed that he had just finished a fight, and hadn't recovered yet. He took out a cigarette, put it in his mouth and raised his head. The fierceness between his eyebrows hadn't faded yet. When he met my gaze, his tone was unkind. What are you looking at? TSK. Quite fierce. I squatted in front of him, traced his face carefully by the moonlight, and said slowly, what's wrong with looking? He left me for 3 years. For 3 years. He didn't let me have a good sleep. Can't I even look now? Leo thought I was provoking him. His gaze was fierce. Are you looking for a beating? Looking like he could rush up and knock me down at any time. Leo was tall and strong, with a heavy air of fierceness. He almost had the words, not to be messed with written on his forehead. If I were really 18 years old, I might really be scared by him. But I'm not 18. I'm 38 years old. I am the widow who has been spoiled by Leo for 10 years. He can't scare me. You're still not obedient even when you're beaten like this. I fearlessly pressed on the bruise at the corner of his mouth. Does it hurt? Damn. Leo was stunned for a moment. When he realized, he frowned and opened my hand. What's wrong with you? Don't touch me. Be careful or you'll get beaten. I raised my eyebrows. Unhappy. In the past, he couldn't wait to stick to me 24 hours a day. Now I can't even touch him. Leo supported himself against the wall and stood up. After a pause, he walked forward limping. His left leg was obviously not working well. I supported him and asked, is your leg injured? Come with me to the hospital. Leo pushed me away and said warily and fiercely, don't bother me. Go away. I was thrown away by him, and almost fell. I was amused and angry. I stepped forward, grabbed Leo's shoulder, pressed him against the wall, pinched his face and kissed him, biting fiercely. Awesome. Injured from fighting and still not letting others take care of him. Being fierce to me. Pushing me. and scolding me. If he can't say nice things, then don't say anything. One's kissed. He'll be obedient. Leo was indeed obedient. He stared wide-eyed, stiffened his body, and even stopped breathing. His face flushed red. Forgotten. He is 18 years old this year. He is a newbie who doesn't even know how to kiss. Afraid of suffocating him, I let go of him and patted his face gently. Breathe. Only then did he take a deep breath. I chuckled. Weren't you quite fierce just now? Say something fierce again and let me hear. Leo. I said. Go to the hospital. Leo stuck his neck out and was stubborn. No. Huh? I moved closer again. My lip bead brushed against his lower lip. Leo was scared and shrank back. He shouted with a fierce look but a weak heart, if you take advantage of me again, I will really beat you. If you want to beat me, then do it. Why shout? I suppressed a smile and said, go to the hospital? Leo. I supported him to the intersection to take a taxi and said slowly, don't fight anymore in the future. If you really have to fight, call me. Leo sneered, do I know you? Are you still controlling me? I'm Zoe. I am your future man. I turned my head and glanced at him. If you dare to fight behind my back again, I'll kiss you until you're a mess. Leo turned his head away and muttered, crazy. What did you say? Leo had an expressionless face and spoke extremely fast. I didn't say anything. There was a slight fracture in the left leg. A cast was put on at the hospital. I asked the family driver to drive the car to the hospital and said to Leo, come live at my house. Leo didn't agree. We just met. You let me live at your house. Don't you think it's presumptuous? I raised my eyebrows. What are you afraid of? Leo sneered. I'm afraid you'll sell me. I was amused. Are you valuable? A father on the run from debts. A mother who died of illness. A poor family. All Leo has left is this one life. He has no one to worry about. So he doesn't cherish his life and doesn't plan for the future. Later, he became a desperado. Leo was speechless for a moment. He twitched the corner of his mouth and didn't speak. I rubbed his prickly head. Your leg is inconvenient. If you are alone at home, and no one takes care of you, I won't be at ease. Come live at my house first. When your leg is better, I'll let you go home. Leo narrowed his eyes and stared at me. How do you know there is no one at home? Little wolf cub. Quite suspicious. I smiled and made up something. Because I have a crush on you and have been paying attention to you for a long time. I even know what color your underwear is. Let alone your family situation. Leo was amused. Then tell me. What color is my underwear? Black. Damn. Leo thought about it all the way. After getting off the car, he said in a cold tone, hey. I don't like men. Don't waste your time on me. Oh. I supported him and walked home. I made a lame excuse. Then just now when I kissed you. Why didn't you dodge? You even let me kiss you for so long. Are you playing hard to get with me? I didn't want to hear his excuses. I interrupted him. Is my lip soft? You. Soft or not? Leo was blocked twice. He said angrily, this has nothing to do with whether your mouth is soft or not. Don't change the topic. I rubbed his red earlobe. Don't be a hypocrite after getting an advantage. When I kiss you, you are probably almost dying of pleasure. Leo stiffened when I pinched him. His breathing became heavier. He pulled away my hand and unconsciously rubbed it. He gritted his teeth and said, shut up. I secretly raised the corners of my mouth. I can't handle 30-year-old Leo. But I can easily handle 18-year-old Leo. 3. My dad was on a business trip, and not at home. I didn't ask the servants to tidy up the guest room. I directly took Leo to my room. When Leo was taking a bath, I leaned against the bathroom door and teased him through the door. Hey. Is your leg okay? Do you want my help? The doctor said you can't get wet. Before I finished speaking, I heard a muffled sound from the bathroom and Leo's suppressed groan of pain. My eyelids twitched. I pushed open the bathroom door abruptly. Leo. Leo supported himself against the wall and stood up. The veins on his neck bulged. He frowned and said, "It's okay." I slipped. Leo was exposed to my gaze. At 18 years old. His body wasn't as muscular as at 30. But it was strong enough. His skeleton was wide and well-proportioned. His muscle lines were very good-looking. On his wheat-colored skin, there were many wounds of different depths. I know there will be more in the future. In those years, I had kissed his scars more than once. Every time I saw his scars, I found them glaring. Fortunately, now there aren't many scars yet. Fortunately, Leo is only 18 now. I still have a chance to put a collar on this wild dog who doesn't cherish his life. I closed the door, walked in, and stood in front of Leo. Leo's eyebrows were full of irritation. "Who let you in?" "I can." I took off the shower head and held it in my hand. I said, "Leo, put your hand on my shoulder. I'll support you." Leo gritted his teeth and said, "No need. Stubborn Knox." I grabbed his wrist and put his hand on my shoulder. I turned on the shower and avoided his injured leg to rinse him. My fingers passed over those scars. I said softly, "Leo, I don't like to see you injured. Don't get injured anymore." Leo raised his head and took a deep breath. He grabbed my hand and said hoarsely, "If you want to wash, then wash properly. Don't seduce me." "Huh?" I looked down and almost laughed crazy in my heart. I patted his solid abdomen with the shower head and laughed at him. "Didn't you say you don't like men? Before I even seriously seduce you, you are like this. Your little brother doesn't listen to you very much. But he gives me face." Leo didn't dare to look at me. He lowered his head. His forehead rested on my shoulder. He said in a muffled voice, "Don't say." His neck was all red. "Leo is extremely pure now. If I tease him again, he will probably explode on the spot." I kissed his ear gently and coaxed softly, "Do you want me to help you?" Leo's breathing became heavier. I gently bit him, "Bag me and I'll help you." Leo didn't move or make a sound. "Forget it. Take it slow." I moved a little and wanted to push him away. Leo probably thought I wanted to leave. Suddenly, he grabbed my wrist. The arm on my shoulder closed in and wrapped around my neck. He pulled me into his embrace and half of his body pressed on me. In a hoarse voice, he said, "Beg you." For a bath took 2 hours. I let Leo sleep with me. He had just been dealt with by me and didn't raise any objections. The bed was very large. We slept on each side. After a while, I said, "Leo, if I hold you and sleep, will you hit me?" "Yes." I laughed and turned sideways. I hugged Leo from behind. His body stiffened for a moment, but didn't move. I slowly tightened my arms. Tighter and tighter. This way. He can't run away. He won't leave me alone again. When I was 25 years old, my dad went bankrupt. He jumped off the roof of the company and left me a corpse and a huge debt. To pay off the debt, I borrowed money everywhere. I didn't care about dignity or face anymore. I drank and smiled with others at a drinking party, and was drunk until I was unconscious. Leo was also at that party. After it ended, I was leaning against a tree on the street and vomiting. Leo handed me a bottle of water and asked me, "Short of money?" I rinsed my mouth and said with a smile, "Extremely short." Leo nodded and asked me, "Can you accept sleeping with a man?" I said, "Then you have to pay more." Leo put out his cigarette and smiled. "Coincidentally, I have a lot of money." Quite coincidental. Leo paid off my debts. I slept with Leo for 10 years. Leo died. Before he died, he left me a sum of money and said, "Zoe, don't sleep with others because of money anymore. It's easy to meet scumbags." The last time I went to see Leo, he smiled and then his eyes turned red. "I regret it. If I had known I would meet you, I should have done good deeds in the first half of my life and prayed for a long life." "Zoe." I'm not at ease. What was he not at ease about? He didn't say. He only said, Zoe. Live well. His fingertips slid over the glass, as if wiping away my tears for me. Fool. Being an unaccompanied lover. How did you develop feelings for me? So spineless. Don't cry. For someone like me. It's not worth it. Whether it's worth it or not is not for Leo to decide. Leo is not necessarily more promising than me. A pair of rings were placed close to his heart, but he didn't dare to take them out until he died. In this new life, I have only one wish. I want Leo to live a long life. I want to save him. I will not let Leo take the old path of mixing with the underworld again and head towards a certain death. Since he doesn't cherish his life, I will cherish it for him. If he doesn't plan for the future, I will plan for him. By any means necessary. I will drag him out of the abyss and let him back to the right path. I always remember that regret of Leo before he died. He didn't just regret it before he died. He had regretted it long ago. It's just that he couldn't say it when he was alive and only spoke it out when he was about to die. Leo really likes listening to me talk about my college life. He said he never went to college. He said that he took the wrong path at the beginning. Later, he could never turn back. He said, "Who doesn't want to be innocent? But not everyone can be innocent. You have to survive first before thinking about being clean, or not." He said, "Zoe, when I was young, no one told me what to do. No one told me how to go on the road ahead. This time, I will hold his hand and tell him how to go. In the previous life, what he wanted but couldn't get. What he wanted to do but didn't do. I will help him complete." 5. After taking in Leo, I secretly transferred schools and went to Changhua. When I entered the class at noon, the teacher was giving a lecture while Leo was sleeping with his head in his arms. He was the only one sitting in the row in front of the trash can. I quietly walked over, put my school bag next to him, and casually took a book from Leo's desk. When I opened it, good grief, it was even whiter than my face. Not even a name was written on it. When the bell rang for the end of class and the teacher left the classroom, I kicked Leo's stool. The commotion was not small, and directly silenced the noisy class. The little fat guy at the front desk nimbly jumped 2 meters away, and looked at Leo, who was on the verge of waking up warily. "New student. I advise you to run away quickly now. Otherwise, you will be in danger later. Leo is really famous for being fierce." I politely smiled at the little fat guy. "Thank you for the reminder." Then I turned around and kicked Leo's stool again. "Little fatty. TSK. Leo moved a little but didn't raise his head. He casually grabbed a book and threw it over, cursing irritably. "Go away." Then he turned his head and changed direction, preparing to sleep again. I caught the book and kicked again. Damn. Is there no end to this? Leo finally got up. He looked over coldly and fell silent. He stared at me for a long time. Then he leaned back against the wall, wiped his face, and muttered to himself, "I'm not awake." I threw the book in my hand at him. "Are you awake now, Leo?" The bell for class rang. Leo whispered to me, "Why are you here?" "I transferred schools." Leo frowned. "White rants for schools. Your original school was fine. The teaching quality of Changhua is quite poor. To chase you." "What?" I moved closer to him and said in his ear, "Transferred schools to chase you." Leo raised his hand, used his index finger to push against my forehead and pushed me away. Looking at me coldly, he said, "I hate love-struck people the most." He withdrew his hand and said expressionlessly, "Zoe, go back to your own school." The English teacher on the podium couldn't take it anymore. "Leo, take your new desk mate and get out to be affectionate." "Leo." I, silently covering my face. Oh, so embarrassing. 6. I became famous because of the English teacher's shout. Since then, I have lost my name and become the wild new student who is affectionate with Leo. When I pulled Leo out of his sleep for the 3rd time and forced him to study, the way the little fat guy looked at me had changed from shock to admiration. He quietly gave me a thumbs up. "New student. Awesome. And Leo's irritation was almost coming out of his head. I pointed at the book and asked him to mark it. Here. Mark it. Leo would rather die than comply. He lowered his voice and said fiercely, "Don't think you can do whatever you want just because you have a crush on me." I glanced at him. Write quickly. Don't force me to kiss you in the sacred classroom. Leo. Leo was tortured by me all afternoon. As soon as the bell rang for the end of class, he jumped up from his seat and hopped out like he was running for his life with his injured leg. I grabbed his hand and looked up and asked, "Where are you going?" "Toilet." "I'll accompany you." Leo quickly refused. "No need." I stood up and put my arm around him. "Come on. You are inconvenient with one leg injured. I'll support you." Leo raised his eyebrows and repeated meaningfully, "You'll support me?" He bit his cheek and laughed. "Okay." I was stunned for a moment. Then I understood and laughed. This naughty kid has been naughty since he was young, but it was just taking verbal advantage. When I really touched his waistband and pretended to support him, Leo held my hand. He lowered his voice. "Damn. Are you serious?" He squeezed my hand and lowered his head with red ears. "I'm wrong. Brother. I'll do it myself. Don't dirty your hand later." I tickled his abdomen and laughed meaningfully. "Recite 30 words for me every night and I'll forgive you once." Leo hesitated. "I advise you not to be insatiable." My hand moved and reached down. Leo held me down forcefully and took a deep breath. "Recite." "I'll recite." For half a month. I watched Leo study during the day and come back to recite at night. I also made a study plan for him. Leo was used to being wild. Making him study honestly was like taking his life. Sometimes when he was pushed too hard, he would throw his book, give up and say harsh words. A kiss would make him obey. Leo was tall and big, but he let me press him on the bed and kiss him until he was out of breath. I lorded over him. "If you don't study, we'll kiss." Leo covered his eyes with one arm and put his arm around my waist as if afraid that I would fall. He sighed and said hoarsely, "Zoe, after all this tossing, what exactly do you want to do?" Listening to his violent yet steady heartbeat, I felt at ease. "Leo, have you thought about the future?" I hugged him tightly. "Let's get out and go to the same university. Okay? Go to school together. Start a business together. Grow old together. This time, we support each other. No one is allowed to leave first. Okay?" Leo didn't speak. 7 Leo hasn't fought, caused trouble, skipped classes or left early for a month. In the monthly exam, he went from being last to 8th from the bottom. He even knows to greet the teacher now. Although it was forced by me. The head teacher held my hand and praised me with tears in his eyes. "Classmates Zoe, I want to give you an award. It's really not necessary." And on the day I received the Peacekeeper Award, Leo played truant. I searched outside the school for a long time. Finally, I found him at the entrance of an alley near Leo's house. The plaster cast on Leo's leg had been removed. He was dragging a steel pipe and walking towards the social youths opposite. Confident and arrogant. Damn it. 1 against 6. He doesn't care about his life. I picked up a brick and rushed up. When I caught up with Leo, I looked at him sideways and gritted my teeth. "I told you to call me when you fight. Did you take it as a joke? I'll deal with you later when we go back." Leo was stunned for a moment, cursed and then stopped fighting, threw away the steel pipe and grabbed my wrist and ran. The social youths behind were chasing while cursing. The wind blew through our hair. Leo loudly cursed at me. "Are you an idiot? Who the hell let you come?" I couldn't speak while running. After running through several streets and alleys and getting rid of the people behind us, Leo let go of me. My heart was overloaded and about to explode. I supported my knees and gasped for breath. Leo looked at me, and then turned and walked away. I grabbed his wrist and stared at him tightly. "Where are you going?" "Come back to school with me." Leo stood with his back to me and was silent for a few seconds. His tone was cold. "Let go." Not only did I not let go, but I held on tighter. Leo looked down at me. Zoe. It's been a month. Haven't you had enough fun? Half of my heart turned cold. What did you say? Everything has an end. When you've had enough fun, go back. I'm very busy and really don't have time to play that game of saving a poor student with you. Leo spoke calmly, but every word he said would punch a hole in my heart. I stood up straight, trembling with anger. I grabbed Leo's collar. You think all I've done is just playing around with you? Little beast. So ungrateful. Leo leaned against the wall, lit a cigarette and looked at me calmly. Otherwise? Otherwise? I almost wanted to laugh but couldn't. My eyes were red with anger. Am I full and have nothing better to do? Come to such a crappy place and play around with a jerk like you? Am I sick in the head? Seeing you injured, I run around taking care of you? Am I being cheap? Staying up late to make a study plan and organize notes for you? Playing around? Did I pour my heart and soul out just to play with you? Leo, even if you are deaf and can't hear me say I like you. But you're not blind, right? I laid my heart out here so vividly and blatantly. Can't you see it? The smoke surrounded his cold and hard face. Leo was unmoved. His voice was deep and cold. Zoe, do you think you are particularly great and affectionate? He sneered. Don't be so self-indulgent. I was stunned. My heart tightened. I laughed in disbelief. What did you say? I said you were being sentimental and one-sided. You imposed so many expectations on me without even asking if I want them. Leo laughed. His expression was vile. Study hard and make progress every day. Fuck studying hard. Zoe, since you like those who are good at studying and honest so much, you should just find a model student. Why do you have to come and reform me? It makes everyone uncomfortable. For more than 10 years, I've been living well. There's nothing wrong. And I don't want to change. I'm just like this. I scumbag. A loser. I can't study well and I can't learn. I can't go to any crappy university with you and I have no future. Leo flicked the cigarette ash. Looking down, he said, Zoe, I'm not like what you think. You want me to be on the same level as you. I can't do it. You will be disappointed sooner or later. That day, I heard your dad call you. Leo finished a cigarette. His voice was extremely hoarse. Your dad is right. Chenghua is very bad. You are not suitable to stay here. You should go back to your original school. We are not on the same path. 8. Leo heard Zoe answering the phone behind his back and arguing with his father. He smoked 3 cigarettes in the bathroom. Zoe's dad was right. Chenghua is very bad. Zoe is excellent. Zoe coming to Chenghua is ruining his own future. Being with him is even worse. In fact, on the first day Zoe transferred to Chenghua, he should have driven him away. He had 100 ways to make that pampered young master give up. Later, he didn't use any of them. When Zoe eagerly came up and kissed him, Leo's mind became unclear. Leo was really afraid of Zoe kissing him. It's not that he wasn't moved. It was too much of a move. His evil thoughts grew wildly. He wanted to possess the person and tie this kid up so that he couldn't leave even if he wanted to. That day when Zoe hugged him and said they should go to the same university, Leo's blood was boiling all over. Even that month, he forgot what kind of person he was. He really put effort into studying and really fantasized about going to the same university as Zoe. Until the debt collectors came to the door. The leader was called Sam. He said, "That friend you recently made, isn't he quite rich? Ask him to borrow some money." A basin of cold water poured down on his head. Leo was cold to the bone. There was only one thought in his mind. He couldn't let these bastards set their eyes on Zoe. His life was cheap. If it was ruined, it was ruined. Zoe was such a beautiful young master. If he was ruined, Leo would feel heartbroken. Leo hated fate, hated his shitty dad, and also hated himself. Why couldn't he learn his lesson? For someone like Zoe, how dare he have delusions? How could he deserve it? 9. Leo's words were too bastardly. He really hurt people. Hurt me and also himself. I couldn't hold back and punched him. I punched him 3 times in the abdomen. Leo frowned but didn't fight back. I was so angry that I bit his chin hard and said angrily, "You can't control where I want to go to school. Whether we are on the same path or not is not for you to decide." Then I went up and kissed his mouth. Leo dodged for a moment. I slapped him and he became obedient. He let me kiss him like a dead person. The more I kissed, the angrier I became. Leo's face was cold but his body was extremely hot. Pretending. After venting enough anger, I calmed down instead. I held Leo's shoulder and asked him while suppressing my temper, "Speak properly. What exactly happened?" If Leo didn't like me, I wouldn't believe a single word. Didn't I know him well? I am Leo's ideal type. In Leo's words, it is not a bit more, not a bit less. Every inch is just right on the tip of his heart. If Leo didn't like me, there would be no one in this world that he likes. This confidence was given to me by Leo. In those 10 years, the old man almost took out his heart and threw it to me to play with. This month, Leo was completely obedient under my control. Occasionally, when he was annoyed by studying, he would show his teeth. A few kisses would smooth his temper. If it wasn't for something happening, Leo couldn't be so abnormal and try so hard to push me away. I thought that as long as we talked things out and solved the problem, it would be fine. But Leo didn't seem to think so. He asked coldly, "Have you finished going crazy? When you're done, let go." He pushed me away and straightened out the clothes that I had messed up. "If you want to stay at Chenghua, then stay. You're right. I can't control you. Similarly, don't come and control me either." 10. Leo didn't go to school for a week. His attitude clearly told me as long as I didn't leave, he wouldn't go to school anymore. Before I could figure out what to do, my dad came back from a business trip. We had an argument at home because of my transfer. I casually said to him, "Don't meddle in my affairs. Check the company's accounts more." The old man was very confident. "You know nothing about company affairs. Take care of yourself. You know how many people you've offended in business. In recent years, you only care about running cooperation. Have you checked the accounts? 1,000 mild collapses because of an ant hole. If you don't pay attention, you'll cry when you're cheated. Asking you to check the accounts is not a big deal. Just do it conveniently." The old man gave me a look and laughed. "You worry quite a lot." Hearing this, he took it to heart. I breathed a sigh of relief. I was afraid that I had little influence and the old man wouldn't listen to me. Later, I mentioned it intentionally or unintentionally several times. The old man finally started to check. And he really found something. President Frank will be busy again. I hope he can be more capable this time, and not bankrupt himself again. There are still 7 years until he goes bankrupt. If it really doesn't work then, I'll cover for him. I couldn't catch Leo at school, so I simply rented a house near his home. I was still angry and didn't rush to find him. Leo is just that kind of person. He loves to bear things by himself when encountering problems. His mouth is tighter than a clamshell. When the anti-mafia wind blew on him, he was extremely anxious. But in front of me, he didn't say a word, until Leo's judgment came down. I didn't know he had been arrested. Leo didn't want to talk about it, so I investigated by myself. I hired a private detective to follow him for a few days and really found something. His dad lost money in business. He borrowed 3 million in usurious loans and ran away. By now, it's probably more than that amount. The debt collectors come from time to time. This kid is also tough. He never gets beat unpassively. Every time they come to collect his debt, it ends up in a lose-lose situation. The debt collectors also find it unlucky. After beating him a few times, they reached an agreement to pay 800 yuan per month. The kid does odd jobs. 100 yuan can be managed. But during this period, when the debt collectors heard that he made a rich friend, I thought 800 yuan was too little and wanted him to borrow from that rich friend, and get 20,000 yuan at one time. Understood. That rich friend is me. No wonder Leo was anxious to cut ties with me. I paid the detective and wanted him to follow for 2 more days. The detective waved his hand and refused. No way. That kid found me and chased me for 2 blocks. If I wasn't fast enough, I would probably get beaten. If I follow any longer, he will ruin my reputation. I didn't insist. Leo didn't want me to be involved in his affairs. He didn't open up to me. He wanted to push me out of his world and sink by himself. Dream on. Leo did jobs that made money quickly. Similarly, they were also risky. He was good at fighting and worked as security in various entertainment venues. Nicely put. It was security. In fact, it was a thug. I wore the most flamboyant clothes. The thin sweater was wide open. I went to the bar where Leo worked. When Leo saw me, he was stunned for a moment. His gaze was like a sharpened knife. He looked me up and down thoroughly. His eyebrows frowned deeply. He opened his mouth and bit his cheek. After all, he didn't say anything. A guy named Ben came to strike up a conversation and suggested sharing a table. When persuading me to drink, his hand intentionally or unintentionally touched me. Later, he took out a cigarette and held up a lighter and leaned closer and asked, "Do you know how?" I lowered my head and held the cigarette he offered in my mouth. Before I could light it, the cigarette in my mouth was taken away by someone. Looking up, I saw Leo put the wet cigarette butt in his mouth, tilted his head and lit it. He took a puff and pressed it into the ashtray. He said to Ben, "Sorry. He doesn't know." He exhaled smoke and pinched the back of my neck. His gaze fell on me. "Have you had enough fun?" I was dizzy and smiled at him. Leo's gaze darkened. He frowned irritably. In retaliation, he pinched my face and said fiercely, "Still have the nerve to smile." He used strength to pull me up from the sofa and leave. Ben was not happy. He held me and didn't let go. "Dude. First come, first served. Don't you understand?" Leo brushed him aside. His tone was very light. "How do you know you came first?" Ben still wanted to pull me. Leo put his arm around me and took a step back. He pressed me into his arms. Looking back, he pointed at him. His gaze was gloomy and full of fierceness. "Don't move. If you touch him again, I'm afraid I can't help but beat you to a pulp. Seriously. Stand there and don't provoke me. It's for your own good." When Leo got angry, everyone was scared. Ben didn't dare to move at all. Leo took me out of the bar. After passing through several streets and alleys and the voices faded, he stopped. As soon as my wrist was released, my back was slammed hard against the wall. Then, Leo pressed down. His lips bit mine, and he gnawed like a dog. His hand slipped in from the wide hem of my sweater. He gave a hard squeeze on my chest muscle and then moved down. He had many calluses on his hand and was very strong. His touch made me numb and painful. Leo kissed hard. I kept leaning back. My neck was almost broken. Only when my lips were swollen and did he let go. He kissed down along my chin, Adam's apple, and collarbone. Thinking I was too short, he put his arm around my waist and lifted me up. He put one leg in between and supported me. I couldn't control myself. I raised my head and called his name intermittently. Leo kissed more and more excessively. The wide sweater was lifted by him. He gnawed on my chest muscle. His hand rubbed on my abdomen and undid my pants. I was shocked and firmly held his hand. "Leo. Enough. No way. This was outside. Why not?" Leo looked up. His breathing was uneven. His palm was against my abdomen. His lips were moist. His gaze was chaotic. "You dressed like this and deliberately came in front of me to act like this. Isn't this what you want?" Now my mind was clear. The fire that was aroused also died down. I asked in disbelief, "What did you say?" Leo chuckled. His tone was cruel. "What are you pretending? You've been seducing me all night. Do you really think I can't see it? Want it? I'll give it to you. I slapped Leo on the face and pushed him away forcefully. Leo was turned aside by my slap. The corner of his mouth was broken. His dark eyes reflected the light of the street lamp. Cold and piercing. After a long time, he raised his hand and wiped off the blood from the corner of his mouth. I turned and walked back. After a few steps, Leo caught up with me. He grabbed my wrist and pulled me back and asked, "Where are you going?" I sneered. "Do you have the right to ask?" "I don't have the right to control you." Leo pulled up my wide-open sweater. "Still heartless," he said. "But if you want to be promiscuous, go somewhere else. Don't be cheap in front of me." What he said was all unpleasant. I nodded. "Okay. I'll find a place where you can't see and find someone to be promiscuous." Leo's hand holding me suddenly tightened. He stared at me fiercely. He was so angry that he couldn't say a word. He didn't move for a long time. I moved my wrist and said, "Let go." Leo still didn't move. He suppressed the rising anger bit by bit. After a long time, he choked out a sentence. "I didn't mean that." After a long time, Leo lowered his head and said in a muffled voice, "I was wrong today. Don't be angry with me. Go back. Zoe. Please. I beg you. Please go back. Don't be like this." I saw the young man's red eyes. Like a trapped beast locked up. No matter what, he couldn't break free from the net that bound him. He was so painful, and so desperate. After using up all cruel methods, he finally ran out of tricks. He bent down and lowered his head and begged me. I looked up and took a deep breath. "Zoe, you are such a jerk. Why bully him like this? He is already in great pain." Before he said those heart-wrenching words, he had to cut his own heart thousands of times. I am in pain. He is also in pain. 11. But if it doesn't hurt, one won't learn. I took 2 steps forward, held Leo's face in my hands, and kissed the red corner of his eye. I asked, "Leo, do you really feel at ease leaving me alone?" Leo trembled when I kissed him but didn't speak. I continued, "Look, I won't be better off alone. Really. If you don't want me anymore, I can do anything. I've gone crazy long ago. If you don't hold me back, I'll die." Leo said, "Zoe, what on earth are you after?" I saw Leo's tears. He viciously trampled himself into the mud. "I'm not worth it. It's not worth it for me. Do you understand? Why do you have to be with me? You deserve better. But not me. Whether it's 18-year-old Leo or 30-year-old Leo. Whether he has nothing or is successful. Leo always feels from the bottom of his heart that he doesn't deserve me. So 18-year-old him pushed me away. 30-year-old him kept silent with the ring covered. I asked him, "Better? Leo, will there be anyone in this world who can treat me better than you?" Leo looked at me for a long time. Then he lowered his head, covered his face with his hands, and slowly squatted down and curled up on the ground. I heard the suppressed cry of 18-year-old Leo. Hoarse and choked. "Why first me? I can't bear to part with you. I can't bear it either." 12. I pushed Leo to that extent and didn't give him any room to retreat. After disappearing for 2 months, Leo was led back to Changhua by me again. The grades that had finally improved a bit returned to square one after such a commotion. After being dealt with, Leo was obviously much more obedient and would even take the initiative to take notes. I smiled with relief, looking at the desk. I was furious. This is a math class. What the hell are you writing on a physics book, Leo? I could feel his absent-mindedness. He was not only absent-minded but also tense all over. His temper was getting worse and worse. At first, I couldn't find out the reason. Later, I saw Leo hooking shoulders with the social youths who were chasing dads that day at the entrance of an alley. They were gathered around and beating a middle-aged man. Leo's expression was very light, but his blows were very heavy. After getting the money from the man, A youth with Sam on his face put his arm around Leo's shoulder and said with a smile, "You are still the one. Brother. This deadbeat has been chased for 3 months and didn't spit out a word. You made him submit. Brother Felix really has an eye for people. You are meant for this line of work. If you had followed Brother Felix earlier, you would have been prosperous long ago. Let's go have a meal together." Leo threw his hand off, picked up the school bag by the wall, waved his hand and walked back. "No. I have something to do." I followed him from a distance. I saw Leo turn into a public restroom and slowly wash the blood off his hands. He stood under the house I rented for a while, and then turned and went home. When he came out again, he had changed into a different set of clothes. Holding a school bag in his left hand and English book in his right hand, he walked towards my house. Along the way, he recited words all the way. When he reached downstairs of my house, he hadn't memorized them. So he stood at the stairway and recited for a while before going upstairs. He got all the English dictation right in the evening. After I finished correcting it, Leo gave a contemptuous smile. I said inferently, "Very good. Do math." Leo stared at me and didn't move. I turned my head and did my homework. Leo came over and said unhappily, "Zoe, did you forget something?" I didn't even raise my head. "What?" I got all the English dictation right. "Oh." Leo propped his head up and stared at me intently. "Zoe, you forgot to kiss me. My English dictation was all correct before. You would kiss me." Kiss him again? I was already in a good mood for not hitting him. I threw down my pen and looked directly at him. I deliberately asked, "Leo, who is Brother Felix?" We would never wait for him to confess on his own until the next life. 13. Brother Felix. Felix. I know him. By then, he was already the chairman of Junbo Group. In the 3rd year when I was with Leo, this man died. When I came out, the sun was shining brightly, stinging my eyes. I found it ridiculous. Something that could be solved with just 200,000 yuan. It was so easy. But it cost Leo his whole life. So fucked up. 14. On the 3rd day of Leo's leave, I barged into his house. That was the first time I went to Leo's house. The house was not big. There were very few items. And they were all neatly placed. The only mess was the scattered wine bottles in the living room and Leo who was hugging a wine bottle and sleeping in a daze on the sofa. I paid the locksmith and walked over. I squatted by the sofa and patted Leo's face. "Wake up." Leo frowned, opened his eyes, looked at me for a long time, then released the wine bottle and hugged me. He was very strong. He hugged me and rolled over, squeezing me between him and the sofa. With his long arms and legs, he wrapped me tightly and held me firmly. He put his chin on my head and rubbed it, murmuring, "Zoe, don't go. Don't ignore me." The villain filed the first complaint. Who ignored whom first? Leo was obviously not awake. Half was drunk and half was feverish. It was so hot when I touched him. I pushed him. "Leo, let go. You have a fever. I'll find medicine for you." It was better not to push. As soon as I pushed, Leo held me even tighter and said unreasonably, "I won't let go." And he said, I got all my English dictation right. He still remembered. His big hand touched my face and fumbled to kiss me, from the tip of my nose to my lips. In a hoarse voice, he said, "All correct. Reward me." Only then did I realize that before, when Leo could be pushed away by me, he was holding back his strength. If Leo didn't want to back off, I couldn't push him away at all. This guy was ridiculously strong. He kissed me from top to bottom with his eyes closed. My shirt was lifted up by him. He kissed all the way to my belly button and was about to pull down my pants. I was uncomfortable being kissed by him. I pushed his shoulder. "Leo, you still have a fever. Wait until you get better." Leo held my wrist and kissed my hand little by little. In a muddled voice, he said, "I don't have a fever. I'm not sick. I'm fine." Fine my ass. I was almost burned to death by him. 15. Charging forward while sick. Leo collapsed after finishing. I found two antipyretic tablets with trembling legs and gave them to him in a mess. He fell on the bed and fell asleep as soon as he closed his eyes. Animal. We'll settle accounts when he wakes up. When he woke up again, it was dusk. The sky was dim. Leo was sitting by the bed and smoking. I leaned over. When he wasn't paying attention, I rubbed out his cigarette but with my hand. Damn. Leo quickly took the cigarette away and pressed it into the ashtray. He held my hand and looked at the just burned mark. The veins on his forehead were throbbing. Zoe, are you asking for a beating? That's a cigarette, but you rubbed it with your hand? I didn't care much and said, don't smoke anymore. If you don't learn well at a young age, you will get sick when you are old. Leo didn't speak. He just kept looking at my hand. After looking at it for a long time, he put my burned finger into his mouth. The fingertip was soft. My heart's often too. I pulled out my hand, held Leo's face and kissed him. Leo put his arm around my waist and let me kiss him for a while. Then he pulled me tightly into his arms and hugged me. In a hoarse voice, he said, I'm afraid of you. 16. Leo's grades were ridiculously bad and he started making up for it too late. His college entrance examination results were naturally not ideal. 268 points hit Leo hard. I wanted to accompany him in reviewing, but Leo didn't agree. But he couldn't be more stubborn than me. During the year of review, Leo was really desperate. Sometimes when I got up at night, I could see Leo sitting at his desk with a lamp on, buried in studying. Before, I forced Leo to study. Now, I force Leo to rest. Leo didn't think it was a big deal. Instead, he comforted me and said, it's okay. I'm not tired. Several times, he could fall asleep while eating. I was so angry that I quarreled with him. Leo listened to me scolding him. After listening, he would hold me and kiss me. Until once after a quarrel, Leo lowered his eyes and said, Zoe, I can't let you down. You said we would go to college together. I remember it. You can't forget it either. Zoe, I don't want you to accommodate me. Leo stroked my face. His gaze was gentle. You deserve the best. But if it has to be me, I hope I am the best. Leo didn't know that he had always been the best. 17. When I was 35 years old, Leo was successful in his career. Even my dad praised him endlessly. The reason for his praise, of course, also included that 10 years ago, Leo helped him through the bankruptcy crisis. At that time, to fill the hole in my dad's accounts, Leo took out all his savings. The company that had just started almost couldn't operate. On August 7th, there was a heavy rain. I dreamed of Leo's grave. After waking up, I stared blankly at the heavy rain outside the window. The door behind me opened. I heard a man's heavy breathing. Leo rushed in with rain all over him. His eyes were red. I was stunned. Didn't you go on a business trip? Why? Leo took a few quick steps, rushed forward, hugged me tightly, and called my name. Zoe. Zoe. The warm and damp drops fell on my neck. Leo's voice was hoarse and choked. My Zoe. You have suffered. In an instant, tears welled up in my eyes. I firmly grabbed Leo's clothes and cried loudly. Leo. I dreamed that you died. I won't die. I will accompany Zoe and live a long life.